welcome to the show. And I'm your host, Greg Fenton. Each week, we explore topics and ideas related to the experience of people with conflict and look to promote the profession of conflict resolvers. We are available to connect with at fentonmediation@gmail.com and at 647-227-4734. Check out the Facebook page for Mediation Station and the group page to ask to become a member. Also visit YouTube channel, Fenton Mediation, to see videos of past shows. Listen to podcasts of Mediation Station on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Please follow us at our Twitter account, at Fenton Mediation. The conversation today is called Building Trust Amongst Immigrant Communities, the reality of the Norwegian child welfare approach. And with me in waiting is Leoul Mekonen. The program continues live each Sunday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. through Zoom. We will engage in conversation with everyone attending, able to listen and watch the conversation. Microphones and webcams will be closed, and if anyone wants to contribute anything, there are two options. One is to see the chat icon as a bubble at the bottom center of your screen for you to click to then type in a comment or question and then click to send. Or you can click on the reactions icon that is also located on the bottom center of your screen for us to see that you want to speak. We will open your mic and you can speak, and then we'll close your mic after you've shared your comment or question. The show is being recorded for both video and audio purposes that will be uploaded for public access on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts to listen to once the show is edited. So I have one thing to put out before we get into the conversation. Family Mediation Practicum Ontario. There is another option available for individuals looking to become accredited as a family mediator in Ontario. The Ontario Association for Family Mediation, OAFM, is now providing that 80 of the 100 hours of practicum experience can be completed during simulated cases. The final 20 hours of the practicum must be completed with real clients. So Family Mediation Ontario, or Practicum Ontario, is providing, through its OAFM approved course, this experience starting this fall, 2021, by using realistic case scenarios with the 80 hours counting towards accreditation. All classes are online with real-time feedback. Before applying, you need to complete all the courses, including domestic violence and power imbalance screening, mediation training, family law, family relations. There are 3 options for registration. You can either register for the entire practicum of 80 hours, or you can register for the first module of 40 hours that includes observation and co-mediation, or you can register for the second module of 40 hours that is focused on mediation, provided you've completed the first 40 hours. For more information, please email to familymediationpracticum@pccs.ca. There's a web page for you to access and get the information you need. So let's shift to the conversation for tonight. Building trust amongst immigrant communities, the reality of the Norwegian child welfare approach. And on view with me, live from Oslo, Norway. He's sitting in the harbor, floating around. How you doing, Lau?
So fine, Greg. It's so nice to see you after many years.
Yes, this is a good opportunity for us to reconnect and rekindle our brotherly spirit, I'll say. We first connected in 2007. You traveled over from Norway to attend a training at the community-based agency that I was working at the time, Conflict Mediation Services of Downsview. And then subsequent, during your time here, you also visited with me on the radio program for a conversation.
True.
That I just recently edited. It's only like 13 and a half years late, but you know, it's better late than never.
It is. I liked it.
Did you listen to it?
Oh, I listened to it really, and it evokes lots of feelings inside me, and it helps me also to consider where I was at that time in my intercultural journey and where I am now. So it was very exciting, and it was educational for me also to listen my own voice.
Yeah, and I know that you had expressed the, you know, when we first met, I don't know, a couple months ago or a little less, that you had a concern about your voice and your speaking. And, you know, I just said to you or wrote to you that it's like riding a bike, that you acquire the skill. Maybe you don't always ride the bike. So once you get the bike and you sit on it, it just all comes back to you.
I believe so. I believe so. So I will say how it goes today.
I'll say, hey, it's going to go great. I know the quality of person you are and the kind of conversation and thought-provoking information that comes from your mindset. So I'm totally looking forward to our engaging conversation together. So it's been almost the 14 years. You've been in Norway. What have you been up to during the course of these past years?
Oh my God. I have gone actually through lots of exciting moments and very fruitful development, I can say. Because, I mean, the time I came to Canada to take the intercultural mediation course, so I was so interested, about these diversity issues, and especially bringing, the knowledge and the skills that I acquire from other countries that have 200, 300 years of living with ethnic minorities. So returning from Canada, so I have done lots of things, I was actually engaged in 4 different organizations. The first one was I had a Ghanaian friend, a sociologist, who used to work with me in outreach work, contacting marginalized minority youth in the inner cities. So we were working, within the governmental institution. So we had not that much freedom, to work so close to these children because of these professional barriers and professionalism and all this. So we established an organization called Center for African Mental Health Promotion. And then we started, engaging these ethnic minority youth who spend most of their time in the inner cities, smoking hash and using drugs. But we try to get them out of that area and pull them and take them to uh, meaningful and constructive areas. So that was one of the projects that I'm so proud of, and the organization that we established together. After that, I jumped to another organization. So I worked as a deputy manager and project manager. So I spent some years working on the home and school relationship, because many of these immigrants and refugee families, parents, they don't know the school system in Norway. So they want their children to succeed in Norway, but they don't know how they can assist them. They don't know the language, they don't know the school system. So I worked well on that, and the other project I worked on was sexual education for ethnic minority girls. When you see statistics, I don't know how the statistics looks in Canada, but here in Norway, so it was alarming. for some consecutive years. So it was, we have seen that ethnic minority girls between the age of 19, 24, 25. So there was overrepresentation among those who have what is called unwanted pregnancy and abortion
Right.
problems.
Yeah.
So I spent also some time, just to learn about this situation, and I developed some projects and try to do health preventive programs, targeting only minority girls. So it was also very exciting for me because as a man, just being involved in women sexual reproduction issues was a little bit complicated, but I managed to work effectively.
Mhm.
And domestic violence was another issue that I worked. So there were many organizations, you see, who attract me and give me a position to work on different projects. Then the Foundation Amatia, which is yeah, an organization in Norway, which is you find it in all the districts. So they involved me the last 10 years on projects on domestic violence. So it is raising, awareness raising program targeting the ethnic minorities. So in all the projects that I'm involved in, so I always think, how can I make it culturally sensitive? How can I make it, culturally appropriate for this to take up these issues because they are, taboo issues.
Within
And
the cultures themselves.
yeah, about reproduction, unwanted pregnancy, abortion, for in terms of religion, in terms of culture. So
Right.
yeah. So finally, then I established my own my own foundation
What's that
with
called? What's it called?
it is called the Council for Cultural Competence in Health Preventive Programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's work this through the conversation for sure. We're going to get to a lot of stuff. How do you identify in terms of your own culture, ethnicity? Well,
Yeah, one thing that I have learned in my life is, what we call identity, ethnicity, cultural background. And all these are it's there is nothing called a fixed identity, fixed ethnicity, fixed. So it is. The identity issue is, a product of so many of these identities that occur that we establish. Sometimes I work, to get those identities. So I have gone through a lot of transformative situations. For example, ethnically, I used to think and I used to believe I was Ethiopian, and so I feel that I represent, the Ethiopian culture and Ethiopian way of thinking and this and that. But, now I lived almost over half part of my life in Norway. For the last 24 years, I lived in Norway, So now I see myself as a bicultural person, not a pure Ethiopian. Of course, originally I'm from Ethiopia, but uh, when I live over half part of my life, I'm well integrated in the society, and there are so many things that I absorb from the Norwegian society. Then I am bicultural, and it became evident to me. It was for the first time I traveled to my country after 24 years of exile.
when you okay,
Yeah.
I wanna unpack exile. Continue with your story.
Yes. So, after 24 years of exile, I returned back to my country. To tell the truth, the only common thing that I discovered with my family and the people who lived around me and those my relatives and all the people that I left for the past 24 years, the only common thing was language. I found out how much I was culturally changed. The way I see the world, they say I see human beings, they say I interpret human communication, and the norms that I have adopted in Norway. Then it became too clear that I have become, I was, what can I say? Yeah. Uh, Ethnically, I'm Ethiopian. When somebody sees me, I'm a visible minority, visible Ethiopian person. But culturally, so I was, yeah.
So so with the word exile, how does that connect to your journey to Norway?
The exile
Yeah.
in Norway.
No, yeah. How does that connect from your roots, Ethiopia, to your ultimate destination where you've been for the last 24 years in Norway?
It is this identity issue is it's a very, very strong thing. When I talk about it, I usually refer to the biblical songs that we know. If I forget you, Jerusalem, let my right hand be, lose its cunning. It was the diaspora who song, who wrote that song. 70 years of exile in the Babylon, and it's almost the same experience. No matter how far and how long I have been detached from my country, but still that emotional commitment is there, because I am also politically involved and I follow all the gross human rights violations and all the catastrophic and the tragedy and the political movement. So I'm deeply immersed in that. I couldn't detach myself, even though I'm physically in Norway. So emotionally, I was well connected.
Right.
So um, uh, yeah. So what can I say? It's not something that uh, it was not something that I lose, the touch with the Ethiopian culture and the Ethiopianness generally, the identity issue.
Yeah. Well, we talk with migration when people leave for different reasons, their country of origin, and then they migrate. We talk about assimilation or integration. And I'm hearing from you the integration. You've retained the roots of who you are. The core of your birth and the growing of your earlier years. And you've also acquired the Norwegian perspective of culture, life, language. You're fluent in Norwegian, right? The language.
Fluent is very difficult to say, because you have to get it, with just like a breast milk, to be fluent in a foreign language. Uh, but what I can say is, I educate with, I'm an educator. So I give lectures to medical doctors, psychologists, and those who are taking on the postgraduate program. So I feel that I can use the advanced form of the intellectual academic language.
So you do teach. You're in the university as a lecturer.
Yeah, actually, my working place is we are educating professionals, medical doctors, and social workers who are specializing in child and adolescent mental health. So it is actually above university. So we are qualifying. It is a specialization program I'm working on, but that is my ordinary work. Is not my foundation.
I would say, you correct me if I'm wrong. You do your job, which is your job, your work, because you have to do something to generate income.
Yes,
The other things that you're involved with, which we'll talk about, are your passions. And those are the things you're inclined because you want to do them. The work is you have to do it because that's the necessity of being able to live.
it is. It is. You see, I myself, I came as an asylum seeker to Norway. I lived in the Norwegian refugee camp. I know all the struggles, of being a stranger and coming to a new country, adapting new culture, new language. So it has been, my passion that I have to contribute back. So other immigrants and refugees, asylum seekers, they should not go through the same struggles that I have gone through, and facilitating integration has always been, my passion. So that's why, I strongly work side by side with my job. So I exert a lot of time and effort to reach the immigrant community.
And like, I'm hearing a lots of things, and I want to ask many things, and you're living the two dimensions at least of the Ethiopian roots and the Norwegian perspective, and you're living the perspective of your work, your daily job, and you're living within the scope of your passions too simultaneously. So you're so representative diversity. You're the walking, whatever we want to call it. You represent diversity, and that's what you focus your life on.
Yes.
Diversity. So what do you see your purpose with the immigrant refugee communities, especially within Norway, that have migrated from Africa, Asia, and wherever else? What do you see as your purpose with that?
Yeah. If you could read Norwegian, that is a logo, in the background. So I have a logo of my what is that? My foundation. It says for a successful integration. So what uh, uh, many refugees and immigrants lack in Norway is actually this integration, because when they come to this society, so there are so many factors that overwhelm them. The language, you cannot learn it, just by night. It is complicated. And there are also many refugees who have not been at school at all. They have and many refugee, for example, children who came from Afghanistan, Somalia, these war-ravaged countries. For the last 20, 25 years, these countries, they don't have any infrastructure. So we meet, the children and what's that, these minors, unaccompanied minors who come as refugees to Norway. So they have never been at school, some of them, many of them. So, facilitating integration is very important, not only for the refugees and the immigrants, but also for the entire Norwegian society. I mean, if you see the statistics, you get shocked. I mean, because it is not the reality only in Norway, but if you see all the Western countries, and if you see the socio-economic status of immigrants and refugees, so we are always at the back. We are underrepresented. For example, immigrants are underrepresented when it comes to employment. They are overrepresented when it comes to the level of poverty in the society. When you see, for example, dropout rates among high school students, so ethnic minorities, refugees, immigrants, they are overrepresented. And when you see domestic violence and how many of them are seeking support from the shelters for victims of domestic abuse. So minorities are overrepresented. So in every social scale, then you see that there is an overrepresentation of ethnic minorities in a bad way. And when it comes to services, for example, then you see the underrepresentation. So
The access to resources to help people integrate in a healthy, productive way.
exactly. So this is evident, to see the social and the health inequality between the majorities and the ethnic minorities.
What do you think, from your experience and your knowledge, that the broader Norwegian society, when they see these same statistics that you see and you process your way, what do you think they see?
It depends upon the political inclination. If you see the left-oriented politicians, so they are concerned and they would like to think that this social justice and lack of social justice and being underprivileged in a society, so they want to interpret within that scope. But if you go to on the right side, then you can hear all kinds of explanations from lazy immigrants who come to destroy our welfare system, and this. So there are so many ways. So the political inclination. But what does research show about ethnic minorities generally? So the Norwegian researchers have documented very well, in all respect, the root causes of these health and social inequalities. And we can start from the language barrier. You don't know the language, then your access to resources are limited. And
You can't, you can't read anything that's about promoting the options, the resources that could enable and better provide for your health and well-being within the society. You can't understand the oral presentation of the language either. So you're in isolation. You're so marginalized.
yes, there are many who exist in Norway, physically, but they are marginalized socially and culturally. And sometimes, under certain conditions, because of the migration trauma and the migration crisis, even some people, they are not even well attached to themselves. They are detached from themselves, not only the bigger, the wider society. So knowing about your rights, I mean, I have asked many newcomer refugees about many issues, about what kind of rights they have and what kind of responsibilities and duties they have. There are many who don't know even about their rights.
Well, do they even think that they have a right to have a right?
Yes, you said it well. They don't even know that they have rights because they use their country and the state. How do we see the state? Many of us who came from repressive governments, and the state is there to control you and to attack you and to harm you, to harass you, then you cannot think automatically that the state in Norway will provide you something and give you the rights you deserve. So the whole perspective is shaped by the previous experiences we have about the state and the relationship between the state and citizens.
Yeah, people migrate or travel with these mindsets of lived experience that are the basis for their current lived experiences when they transition themselves within that new space. And that becomes the challenge of the individual, the family, and of the state itself and the broader society.
Mhm.
Because people are living amongst, though they are marginalized on the fringes, on the outsides per se, of the accessing the opportunities that they could so well benefit from in terms of integrating and being productive people. What is your perspective? Why, tonight we're focusing on the Norwegian child welfare approach, the system. What's that all about for you?
Yeah, it is one of the main areas that I'm working on through my foundation. And it is basically child rearing practices. How is it, you know, upbringing, raising children, for example, in Africa, comparing to the child, the norms, the laws, rights we find for child raising, upbringing practices in Norway. There is a very huge difference in many respects. And first of all, we live in a country where, it is well regulated by laws. In my country, for example, I have never heard of a Child Welfare Act, which we call it Barnevern here in Norway. And many immigrants, they don't even know the concept of child welfare services. And someone who is entitled and who has a power to come to your family and say that, no, you don't raise your child properly, so we're gonna remove your child because it is harmful. This concept it is totally strange, you know.
Well, yeah. How can the state come in and do what they're wanting to do or stating that they want to do? Back home, that would not be, culturally, that's not allowed for or
Yes,
provided for.
it is not allowed. I mean, in traditional societies, for example, where I come from, Ethiopia, it is the society that is going to protect you. It's not the child welfare services. For example, if my father is violent against me and he attacks me, then the neighbor and all those around, they will come and they just, they get involved because our culture allows the involvement of other people, and we don't have this family and private life protection or something. For example, domestic violence, we don't need a police or something. Then I hear a voice in the neighborhood, you just go, and no one would say, no, it's not your affair,
Stay
don't be
out of it.
involved. No,
Yeah.
no, they don't say, because it is a collective culture. So many of us who came from a collectivistic, uh, paternalistic, hierarchy, social structure to an individualistic country like Norway, where everything is regulated by law and Child Welfare Act and many other laws. So many of them, they just continue to raise the children the way they knew, the way they have learned, the way they have practiced before. They cannot think automatically, oh, now I set my foot on Norway, then I have to change all my practices. It cannot happen.
And would not happen, because how would they know that there's a distinction? How many people in advance really do the research to understand where they're migrating to? Sorry, especially refugees, who the premise is that they're fleeing for issues of safety, violence that's happening in their home country. And they don't have the time to do all that research to say, okay, pick and choose. I would think you go to a country that's stable, secure, and then you try to figure it out once you're there.
And it's not even the priority, just to think about, oh, how shall I change my child upbringing practices, So many of them, they continue the lives that they knew, the practices they knew. For example, corporal punishment. One of the cases that there is for that explains the overrepresentation of ethnic minority children within the child welfare system. And corporal punishment, how many countries in the world has banned corporal punishment? Only 33 or 34 countries. So the rest 170, 180 countries, they still allow,
The
and it is a
majority, yeah.
common practice. The majority, it's common practice. It is well culturally acceptable in many countries. And how many families suffer just because of corporal punishments? A lot. Many have lost custody, for example, for their children, because automatically corporal punishment, there is a zero tolerance policy in Norway when it comes to corporal punishment or using violence against children. and they lost the custody. And can you imagine, refugee family, they have lost already many family members in a war, even, or people who have drowned in the Mediterranean when they travel, by these boats, these boat refugees.
Yeah.
And finally they come with their children, and the child welfare services,
The,
they take
the
they take
state, yeah, the state's
they
even
remove.
waiting for them when they arrive at the port. For example, if they're, fleeing over the Mediterranean, for example, and then they land, and then the state, their officials see the conditions based on their mindset and their lived experience
Yes.
that's imposed on the people migrating.
You see, I have asked many immigrant groups from Somalia, from Afghanistan, what is child abuse? How do you interpret child abuse? And to tell you the truth, some of them may say, oh, it is beating the children, very hard. So even the definition that they have for child abuse or maltreatment is so shallow, because they don't know the concept. All these concepts are developed within the North European, Western societies. So what is child abuse? What is neglect? Neglect, no, it's a difficult concept, but it is used against them. The day they have done something, as I said, for example, what is age appropriate activity for a child? It depends upon the culture. A 10-year-old child in my country, especially in rural areas, you can't imagine. I mean, they perform so many things just like an adult. Within that community, so it is accepted that they have so many obligations and they have so many responsibilities. And some families, they just come here and they give too much responsibility for their children the way they used to. It crashes with the Norwegian law. And
Yeah.
they say, oh, it is parentification of a child. And the child is overloaded with so many, it is child abuse, it's maltreatment, or it can be interpreted as a neglect. So there are so many concepts. Even I discussed with many refugees. What do you think about, what they think about the best interest of the child? What does it mean? Because in many of these papers and letters that they receive from child welfare services or something, they say it is written, the best interest of the child. What does it mean? And many of them, they have never heard of this concept before in their countries.
Yeah, for sure. Here, I mean, in Canada, we have that concept, best interest of the child. And, that's the foundation for family law matters
Yes.
when people enter into the system. And even the child welfare approach here is about that whole thing. And when it comes in conflict, like you talk about, the clash of the cultures, the clash of the systems, the family, the community-based approach, the collectivism relative to the systemic creation entity that, they just don't align.
It is. It is. Uh, what does it constitute? For these people, just when they receive a letter, it says we have taken this decision just for the best interest of the child. I met some families who have lost, for example, custody for their children because of the domestic violence police have, discovered, or the police case. And the parents, both the mother and the father, I met them in different areas. When when I do this awareness raising program about raising children in Norway, and they say to me, "But the conflict is only between me and her. We have never involved children, and we have never hit children. It's just between us." And even though there is a domestic violence, or we quarrel and we fight, but still we love each other. So why is that, the child welfare services, they just come and take 3 children. And now we have lost custody for all the children just because of the domestic violence. Oh, but have you read, the paragraph? It says, if children live under the conditions that harm their development and health and this, how can how can my fight with my wife can hurt, can be a harmful situation or condition to my children? I don't get it automatically.
Well, even when, let's just say, the system says, read the paragraph that says this, what's the comprehension level for the person reading it if they have no connection with the context, the competency to appreciate what that actually means, especially from where they're from, and that's the basis for who they are, to where now they are now. So reading words is like useless, because if you don't appreciate the whole context of it, it's not going to make, it's just words.
Yeah, you see, it doesn't give sense. Wow, removing children just because I fight with my wife?
Yeah.
And it is detrimental to the children's welfare and well-being. How do they get it? Because you see, the whole system, this child welfare services, is built upon the knowledge we acquire from developmental psychology. And it is a developmental psychology which is developed within the North European or within the Western countries, that we use it as a foundation, to evaluate what is a very good upbringing, what is a very favorable situation for child raising, and this and that. But this developmental psychology that we use here, it is unknown. It's unknown for many of these immigrants and refugees.
So what do you think and what do you feel in terms of your efforts to try to get the connection, the link for people to read the words to then appreciate what's actually being presented to be educated about? What are your efforts to try to get that comprehension?
Yeah, you see, the first thing that we do is in my foundation is we try to create awareness about how does it feel to raise children in our home society comparing to the conditions and the child upbringing situations in Norway. Many of these immigrants, they need a space, a safe space for discussion and collective reflection. We usually, we have developed this culture of, that experts are telling the people, top-down communication, do this and don't do that. We recommend this, we don't recommend that. But this way of approaching ethnic minorities, I have seen that it doesn't help at all. For example, if I want the immigrant communities to understand the negative consequences of corporal punishment, then I have to create a safer space and I have to involve them. Okay, what shall we do when our children are difficult or showing unwanted, undesirable behavior? Just initiating the dialogue. And if they get a safe space for discussion and all of them come with their own opinions, what is the benefits, the pros and the cons of using corporal punishment or other systems of setting boundaries for their children, they learn each other, they generate knowledge by themselves. You see, true change comes from within. It's not just because I, as an expert, is telling them top down to minorities. In Norway, it is punishable by law if you hit your children. So please, from now on, don't use corporal punishment. It is just instruction, even it is warning or it is a trait. There is no knowledge in it.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
where you came in 2007 at Conflict Mediation Services. You know, the program that I managed, the Community Transformation Program, was about creating opportunities for social change within society and the communities we served, though also to put pressure for change on the systems in which the communities were existing. So it had to work on a multidimensional approach, working with one person at a time that would have sort of the impact consequentially. So we had a project in 2008 focused on the Iranian community that migrated previously and also were migrating and were experiencing concerns with domestic violence and abuse. So we got funding for 3 years, and it started in like October 2008. And the idea was that to actually put it out there that the project was about domestic violence was a non-starter. So because my sense was that it would never get buy-in from the people it was meant to serve, because people would not want to be connected with the labeling and the judgment of domestic violence. So it had to be framed from another perspective, and it was called the Iranian Family Wellbeing Project. So from a more positive perspective of inclusion, adapting cultural competencies, incorporating them as a norm practice.
It is really, I'm so excited when you mentioned this, because we have also the same approach in my foundation. We have a project called for a harmonious family life. You know, in the beginning, we have made, some experiments, just calling immigrants to come and participate in dialogue seminars about, domestic violence. And only 5 or 6 persons show up because, they feel that they were already stigmatized by the society, that they are, perpetrators and, violent people. But after that, then we change the dynamics and say, can we talk about how to build a harmonious family life? And then 150, 130 immigrants show up, because everyone wants to have a harmonious family life. But to tell the truth, it is the same thing that we discuss about. What we have intended to talk about domestic violence, we talk it, but we reframe it. We came with a very nice package.
Yeah, the messaging, words matter. Words make a difference in how people process the words, make sense of them, create understanding, and then do whatever actions based on that. So you have to adapt your process and your framing and be all considerate of who, quote, your audience is, and you want to build that connection to provide the service and the support to work with people. How would you, with the work you're doing, to try to get people to comprehend these Norwegian Western concepts, how are you also trying to get the Norwegian broader society to appreciate the lived experience of the immigrant refugee community?
Yeah. You see, I have 2 foot, one foot I have, within the mainstream society. So I work intensively, with the social workers. And since 2003, for example, I educate at various universities about ethnic minorities within the child welfare system. And I do it purposely just to show how the the child welfare system has um, neglected, or didn't provide equitable services to immigrant community. So I conducted, what I remember in 2008, 2009, I conducted intercultural training for 21 child welfare institutions in Norway.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of them, they have started, showing interest after I returned back from Canada, So I developed a course. So still these courses are so popular because everyone needs, it is the intercultural competence is not something that you acquire just by attending one lecture or two lecture or something. It is
or
something,
reading a book.
or reading a book. You have to live in it, and you have to get a space again for collective reflection with other professionals. What is that we missed? What is that? Could we have done something better or different?
Right. Yeah.
So engaging professionals to think difference, and at the same time to get acquainted to the different cultural practices and how people live in different societies, it helps them, to build the competence. And parallelly, it is very important also to educate immigrants, as you say, about these concepts. And I have to find something, uh, we have to use a culturally sensitive way. For example, in your country, in Iran, I can ask one family, when is that your society decides that the parents are very harsh on their children? It's when, what kind of things must be in place for for those parents to be labeled as incompetent, harsh parenting style? Then, when I start to discuss about their own countries and from the information they provide about their country, then we can use the Norwegian frame of reference, just to compare and contrast. But here in Norway, what you have described as normal is not normal here for this and this and this reason. So we go deep into explaining the rationale behind the Norwegian law. Many of them, they say to me, Leoul, why didn't we get, all this knowledge that you provide us 10 years ago? If I have got this knowledge that you transmit or you tell us, you convey now, I wouldn't have lost my children, for or lost the custody 10 years ago. Why is that they say? Many of them, they have heard what is acceptable and unacceptable and what the Norwegian law says. But my question to the Norwegian healthcare or social workers is, if all of us travel to China, and if the Chinese government tell us what is the desirable way of bringing or raising children in China, would we just accept it just because they have informed us what is what is legal and what is illegal? So there must be some sort of conviction to change your practice. And then you say that, oh my God, this, I have never thought of it, how it can affect my child, in a negative way. So you have to create this aha feeling and
Mm-hmm.
thinking, So that's what I'm doing on
I
the
got a
grassroots
I got a
level.
question from our audience. I want to present it. Do you feel the child welfare system in Norway has been able to adapt to the changing needs of their immigrant community? And then they add, thank you for the incredible work you're doing.
Oh, thank you very much. Such kind of generalized questions are very difficult to answer because I want to be honest. The child welfare system still struggles to accommodate, the diversity, and still many of these employees or professionals within the child welfare system, they need intercultural competence every time. It is something that we have to do it all the time, this competency building. And they have the challenges, to tackle intercultural issues. So I cannot hide this. I cannot hide this. So what I can say generally is the government uh, generally has recognized that the immigrant communities, they do not get equitable services, and they are working diligently, in building the competencies and also doing research. Why, for example, there is an overrepresentation of ethnic minorities, and how to adapt and change the
The,
the child welfare system.
the approach, the whatever they're doing
Yes,
to see how it's impacting, to actually then be aware that it's not serving to the best purposes and interests of the community it's meant to serve. And so
true.
there's some openness in some way.
Oh, yes. You see, because, the Child Welfare Act we use today in Norway, it was adopted 30 years ago. And the government has recognized that, within the last 30 years, how many things have ever changed in Norway when it comes to diversity, when it comes to the many other laws that affect also the Child Welfare Act. So now we are in the process of reforming and changing so many areas and improving. So this is what I can say generally. But the challenges are still there.
For sure. And they exist here for sure. And we're getting every day new pieces that come to light of our historic, our events here with the people of color and the indigenous peoples, and how we've treated and still treat. So why would there be any connection? Why would anybody from Canada be interested in what you're presenting about the Norwegian system of child welfare? What's the connection? What's the relevance in any way?
Oh, I have tried, to read, also the challenges of the child welfare system in Canada. Really, sometimes when I read parallelly, the research articles from Canada and Norway, it sounds it was written in the same place in the same in the same country. So there are so many things that are common. For example, the migration experience of refugees, it is similar. It is only the destination that has been changed. And when it comes to, for example, the knowledge that we use to evaluate childcare, it is the same. The developmental psychology, which we use as a framework, to understand and to evaluate what is good parenting and what is bad parenting practice, it's all, it's all the same. So the mindset is the same. And remember, the majority and the minority dynamics is also the same, because when we minorities come to the mainstream society, so we are always, in the verge of we meet a one-size-fits-all approach, because it is the majority that decides what is acceptable, what is right, what is wrong, the routine and the services and the requirements. Everything was done, by the majorities. So most of us, we meet by my way or highway or take it or leave it approach, from the mainstream society. So so there are many things that needs to change at the structural level and also at the grassroots level.
And it's a continuum for sure. Talk is good. I will also use the idiom talk is cheap, because, we got to put things into action to make them actually see how to try to make them work. What do you see what has COVID done also for the immigrant refugee community with regard to the child welfare and the experiences, and what has that done?
Wow, it was, what can I say? It was a double stress factor for migrants. From the beginning, ethnic minorities or immigrants and refugees are socially, they are vulnerable for social isolation and loneliness. and they have a very limited support system in social network. And during the pandemic, so it was exacerbated. It was, the problem. They become, extremely isolated again. And not only that, many have lost jobs, and it's not only losing job or income that affects the family, but the frustration. Many of these violent incidents are occurring, when there is economic stress within the family.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the statistics here of the events, the elevated occurrence of domestic violence events, when people are isolated within the confines of the home, they can't go out and socialize. So there's been a increase exponentially of the circumstances. And I'm just, when COVID will be, the pandemic will be more sorted out, we'll say, and people can actually come out more, what will be revealed or seen to be what's actually happened during the last 14, 15 months.
True.
It's going to be so profound in many
It
ways.
was, and it was global. We can say that. All these tragedies and the negative consequences of COVID. Then we have seen it. Everyone felt it globally, like the rise in the domestic violence, family conflict, and mental health problems. And as you have seen, maybe last time I had a discussion about the mental health issue under pandemic with a Norwegian minister of education, because many were affected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is it, having this conversation mean to you?
It was
This one.
very important,
Yeah.
because when politicians are listening the lived experiences of ethnic minorities, then it has a profound effect on policy and changes. And I can see it that all that we have discussed, and my colleagues also from different organizations who have presented how they see and they understood what they have observed during the pandemic among ethnic minority families and children, the mental health situation, school situation. So it gave insight to the minister and many other politicians, how they can think of, for example, developing new measures to reach to the immigrant population, you know, and how they can use the existing resources, because the immigrant population, sometimes we don't need new things, new measures. There is already too much resource within the immigrant communities. For example, look, in my community, in the Ethiopian community, we have psychiatrists, we have social workers, we have child, people who work in the child welfare services. We have all the professions are. What we need is just to mobilize the existing resources within immigrant communities with a little support from the government. So I hope this will bring the discussion will bring something new and something important.
So as a person I identify as an agitator, a provocateur, a disruptor, these are all things I identify for myself. I'm not going to equate that your lived experience is so distinct and different from mine. It's not on the same, though it's parallel in different ways, for sure. How do you see taking our conversation and then transitioning into your everyday world with your daily life, though even more with your foundation, to try to affect first positive change?
Uh, you see, really, one thing I like about the contact that I have, with professionals like you in Canada, friends, and I travel a lot also to United States. I have visited, for example, in Chicago, many of these uh, was that crisis center or shelter for domestic violence. Uh, you know, and one thing that I appreciate most is the knowledge you and the diversity and how you manage diversity in Canada and United States always, yeah, yeah, it is so wonderful. I like it a lot because I learn a lot from United States and Canada in terms of how to manage diversity. So it translates a lot, because the conversation with you, I mean, those I had earlier also, it gives me new insight how you do things, how you do things. Sometimes, we need to hear what is different, what is the same and what is the different things that we do here in Norway. So when I listen to, for example, the examples that you gave me about the Iranian project on domestic violence, it just lights me up, from inside, because it is a confirmation that all the projects that we do in my foundation is actually it's right, because it is confirmed also from the Canadian perspective. So we need such kind of, cross-continental and cross-national dialogue and conversation, to improve, exchange knowledge, experiences, and improve the system.
And best practices that are culturally informed, that are about adapting to the people and not providing that the people have to fit into this box that's created by the broader society that has the authority and the power to create such systems that we see it's client centric, that we're there for the people, we're not there for ourselves, all these kinds of things.
It is. And there is one thing also I want to say. When it comes to intercultural mediation, I
Yeah.
have seen that you have done a lot in Canada than here in Norway.
That,
Because I follow all the courses and the course plans that you have, and we don't have that. And actually, sometimes I just think that, it would be very nice if I could invite you to Norway, then you share all the knowledge and experience on intercultural mediation from a Canadian perspective. So those who participate in such programs can translate it in a way that it suits to the Norwegian context. And the Norwegian context is not that much too different from the Canadian.
yeah, I'm totally cool, or if that's an opportunity, I welcome the opportunity to do so. It was part of my purpose and intention with the work I did in the community up in Jane and Finch, which is one of the most diverse in Canada, 100 different cultures and ethnicities who speak over 120 dialects, that, foundationally we represented as broad a perspective of the people of the community. So diversity and inclusivity, we have over 40 different languages that were represented on the pool of the mediators. So it was intentional and purposeful, and it was about adapting, client-centric. Just because we were an English-sounding name as an organization, we answered the phone in English. And I'm a white guy and I speak English. That was not going to be seen in a deeper perspective as a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And it was provide that space and place for people to know that they could actually get realization for positive change in the concerns, their daily lived experiences. Yeah.
I have seen that already, in Jen and Finch, the extraordinary work you have done. Really, I wish that competence is adopted also in Norway, Sweden, And in Denmark, I was recently, I get to know someone who is doing similar things on, we call it kulturell megling. It's intercultural mediation there. But really, you have, I was so impressed.
As I want to say that when we first met and I saw you and I just felt that simpatico, alignment of perspectives. You being from another part of the world and I'm being from another part of the world, we still had this connection. And as you said too, the duality of dimensions that actually exist at the same time, though in different locations. I know we're closing on our conversation for tonight. Anybody from the audience want to ask anything or make any comments? There is one that says, fascinating dialogue. Thank you so much. Anybody else? And I really want to acknowledge too, what's the hour that you're up at? What's the time in Oslo?
It is 3:15 in the morning.
And I would suggest this is probably not your normal hour of having Zoom conversations.
Not at all. Just only having the conversation. It works like a coffee to me.
And I hope it's a productive one because it's Monday morning for you. So I hope Monday's a good day for you. As
I hope so. Yes.
Anything you want to share? Is there a learning that you want people to go away with from our conversation?
Yeah. Shall I say something?
Yeah.
It is one thing I want to say is living in a new society and in a new culture is just like navigating in unknown terrain. And so many of those who come here, they just come with the maps that they have from their country, and they use a map from their country to navigate in the Norwegian terrain. That doesn't match, So all what we try to do in my foundation is, we try to correct the terrain and the map. So we rewrite the map, the cultural map that the immigrants come with. And I hope this will be something that we will do together, and we will continue collaboration and cooperation, Canadian-Norwegian cooperation in this regard.
No hesitation, totally, absolutely. So one comment, thank you so much. Child welfare is a passion of mine. This is the person. And the time you've shared with us has been very insightful. Would love to hear more in the future. And then thank you so much. We will have to rewrite the map together.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful evening and a wonderful morning. So, we're going to go soon to our bed and you're going to, I don't know, maybe you'll get some more rest for sure.
Yes, to my bed.
Yeah. So thanks very much for the conversation, and let's figure out to do it again. If that's okay with you. And as I mentioned at the beginning, my sense is at the beginning, I know what you're all about, and I know how rich this conversation was going to be.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Likewise, the same to you. So we're going to, if nobody else says anything, we're going to end, and Laura will do her thing to transition us. And so this will be edited and available within the week or so, and it'll be a resource, a tool for you also to help educate and inform and spread the word. All right. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.